If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you, without hesitation, that my life was solid, dependable, maybe even enviable to some. I was 44, working IT for a mid-sized logistics firm, doing remote support and cybersecurity, mostly from the comfort of a home office I'd built myself in the basement, 2 monitors, ergonomic chair. Even one of those foot massagers under the desk. My wife, Melissa, was 42 and labeled herself a consultant, which sounded fancy, but mostly meant she'd be gone half the week on client calls, staying in hotels with loyalty points and returning home smelling faintly of mint shampoo and airport perfume samples. Our daughter, Ashley, was 17, your typical teenager, fluent in sarcasm, obsessed with TikTok, and always plugged into something through those damn earbuds I could never get her to take out, not even at dinner. We had the house in the suburbs with the trimmed hedges, the golden retriever named Daisy, and a matching set of camping gear in the garage we hadn't touched in 2 years. No. And I thought that meant something. But here's the thing about normal, it's the most dangerous illusion you'll ever fall for. We do date nights once a month, sometimes Italian, sometimes just take out sushi on the back patio under string lights she picked out from Pinterest. We'd split a bottle of red, talk about Ashley's college applications, and Melissa would lean over and kiss my cheek like we were still in the honeymoon phase. Our friends would joke that we were the last functioning couple in the neighborhood. If only they knew. If only I knew. I thought Melissa's late-night Zooms were legitimate. I mean, she'd pace the bedroom with papers in her hand, using phrases like synergy and client retention. It was convincing. Hell, I used to bring her coffee during her calls like some kind of clueless but supportive sitcom husband. Looking back, I see it all so clearly. The lies weren't told in words. They were woven into silences, into skipped hugs, missed glances, the way she started locking her phone even when we were alone, or how she always showered before coming to bed, even if she'd just done it that morning. But I was busy being the good husband, the present father, the guy who brought home paychecks and stayed faithful, even when temptation knocked. I didn't know my entire world was propped up on a mountain of deception, but the cracks were there. I just hadn't looked close enough. Not until one of Ashley's TikToks blew it all to hell. I never thought my life would change because of a TikTok. I mean, I've always seen it as noise, just another flashy app that teenagers stare at for hours, filled with dances, filters, and jokes I couldn't make sense of. But that Saturday morning, I was sipping lukewarm coffee in the kitchen, half curious and half bored, and decided to scroll through my daughter Ashley's account to see what she found so addictive. I wasn't snooping, not really. I was trying to understand her world, maybe find a way to connect with her before she disappeared into adulthood for good. I wish I hadn't. I wish I could go back to thinking TikTok was just harmless nonsense. Because what I found in that 30-second clip cracked the surface of my life wide open, and nothing has felt real since. The video was trending, a popular sound playing in the background with the words, "Don't tell mom," flashing in bold across the screen. It was supposed to be a joke. Ashley had stitched a few clips together, one of her sneaking out with friends, one of her trying on outfits, one where she lip-synced to a raunchy line that made me wince, and then, at the end, something else. A 5-second clip, almost careless, like she didn't even realize what she'd captured. In the background, out of focus, but unmistakable, was Melissa, my wife, standing at a table on a restaurant patio, her head tilted back laughing, her hand resting on a man's chest as he leaned in and kissed her neck. But what hit me harder than the footage itself were the comments. Strangers. Teenagers. Internet nobodies putting the pieces together faster than I had. Is that your mom's boyfriend? Yo, she married? El Mayo, she got caught in 4K. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Liking and sharing. Laughing. The kind of viral attention that spirals into exposure you can't undo. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, phone shaking in my hand, reading every comment as if I were reading a secret letter that had been addressed to the entire world, except me. And that's when I knew this wasn't a one-time thing, or some mistake I could dismiss. That's when it stopped being a TikTok. That's when it became evidence. A spark that lit the fuse I hadn't even realized was winding its way through the hollow core of my marriage. And deep down, in the part of my mind I didn't dare speak from yet, I knew Melissa wasn't going to get away with this. For a moment, just a breath in time, I convinced myself it had to be innocent, some kind of visual trick, a misinterpretation of angles or lighting, or maybe even a weird moment between Melissa and an overly familiar coworker. My brain, desperate for comfort, tried every excuse imaginable to protect me from the obvious truth sitting right in front of me. But denial is a fragile armor, and the human brain, once suspicious, starts processing like a computer infected with malware, obsessed, erratic, and impossible to shut off. I played the clip again, and then again, until the background no longer felt blurred, but terrifyingly clear. The man's hand slid up her back like it had done it 100 times. She leaned in without hesitation. And then came the kiss, not a kiss on the cheek, not a polite embrace, but slow, deliberate contact right on the side of her neck. A soft laugh escaped her lips. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in years, at least not when it was just the two of us. I sat there, my coffee now ice cold, the house too quiet, scrolling through Ashley's page like a detective piecing together a crime scene that had unfolded right under his nose. The deeper I went, the more cracks began to show. A post from 3 months ago, Melissa in a trendy hotel lobby, supposedly out of town on business, matched a comment from Ashley's friend. Ugh, your mom, and that guy again face with years of joy, he's hilarious. That guy again. My pulse raced. I found him in at least 4 other videos, always lingering in the background like a ghost with perfect hair and a tailored button down, the kind of guy who drinks wine slowly and calls waiters by their first names. And each time, Melissa was nearby. Sometimes they weren't even trying to hide it. In one, Ashley filmed herself dancing in a mirror while Melissa and the same man walked past the doorway behind her, laughing, his hand grazing the small of her back like it belonged there. What scared me more than anything was how I hadn't noticed sooner. I began to replay conversations with Melissa like they were surveillance tapes, her vague explanations for last-minute flights, the way she used to update me from the airport but had slowly stopped sending photos or receipts, the missing earrings, the forgotten perfume bottles that weren't her usual scent. And Ashley, God, even Ashley had dropped hints I'd ignored. Mom says you work too much, she'd said once when I missed a dinner. Brian makes her laugh more. Brian. There it was. A name. A single syllable that turned my stomach. A name I didn't know but was about to obsess over. Because now I needed answers. And more than that, I needed proof. Not just for court. Not just for Ashley. For me. Because if I was going to burn 10 years of my life to the ground, I wanted to watch it go up in flames knowing exactly who set the match. There's a distinct moment, a kind of psychological fracture, when suspicion bleeds into certainty, and once that transformation occurs, the only thing more painful than the truth itself is the realization that you've lived with a lie so convincingly sold. It felt like love. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't confront Melissa or tip my hand in any way. Instead, I waited for the right moment. One of those evenings when she came home late from a client dinner and left her phone plugged in on the nightstand while she showered. My hand shook as I picked it up, not from fear of getting caught, but from knowing deep in my bones that whatever I found would permanently change the way I saw her. Using a cloning app recommended by a cybersecurity buddy, I mirrored her phone's contents onto a clean device I had prepped weeks before: messages, photos, app data, GPS, everything. In under 5 minutes, I had her entire digital life living in my pocket like a second, unfiltered version of her, and what it showed me made me sick. The man was named Brian Delaney, a charming, well-dressed executive type, the kind of guy who makes motivational posts on LinkedIn and wears Italian leather shoes even to casual brunch. I recognized him immediately from the TikToks, but the messages confirmed everything. Brian had been Melissa's emotional support system for over a decade, her words, not mine. There were texts that went back to the early days of Ashley's elementary school, photos from weekend retreats I'd helped her pack for, and worst of all, explicit conversations detailing how they navigated their double lives around me. They used nicknames, Bubbles and Tiger, as if the cutesy garbage could somehow camouflage the betrayal. There were receipts buried in her inbox, hotel bookings under fake names, flight confirmations, even 2 spa packages in Napa Valley for a weekend. I remember being stuck at home with a stomach bug and Ashley's science project. The whole time, she was sipping champagne and playing house with him, while I lay curled up on the bathroom floor with a thermometer in my mouth. But it didn't end there. No, the pain metastasized into something far darker when I realized this wasn't just cheating. It was an entire alternate life. Birthday dinners I thought she missed due to work conferences? Lies. Business expenses I'd helped write off on our taxes? Fabricated. Gifts I never saw, jewelry, lingerie, even a designer bag I once asked her about that she claimed was for a client, all paid for with our joint credit card. I tracked Melissa's locations for weeks using a discreet GPS app I'd installed on her phone's back end. Every late-night dinner, every fake out-of-town meeting, every private detour. I documented it all. Because while I couldn't undo the past 10 years, I was about to ensure she remembered them for the rest of her life, because she'd made me feel invisible. And now, I was going to show her what it felt like to be exposed. There's a pain sharper than betrayal, and I didn't understand it until I heard my daughter say the words that broke something inside me I didn't even know was still intact. It happened on a Tuesday evening, quiet and uneventful, the kind of night where the suburban calm feels almost artificial. I had just finished grilling burgers out back, Ashley scrolling through her phone on the deck steps, her face lit up by the screen like a halo of distraction. I don't know what compelled me to ask. Maybe it was the weight of everything I had discovered, Melissa's secret world, Brian's smug face plastered across her camera roll, the growing folder of evidence sitting on a hard drive hidden in my locked desk drawer. I asked Ashley, as casually as I could manage, what she thought of Brian. She didn't even look up, just shrugged. Mom's always different when she's with him. I figured you already knew. I froze, spatula in hand, suddenly aware of the roaring silence between us. I asked her what she meant, trying to keep my tone measured, careful, not wanting to startle her or reveal that her words were detonating landmines in my chest. She blinked, finally looking up, confused by my reaction. I mean, she's been with him forever, Dad. Like since I was little. I thought you guys had, like, an agreement or something. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was describing a normal detail of her childhood, like her parents just had some quirky, open arrangement where Mom disappeared with her lover and Dad just quietly accepted it. I stood there, smiling through the sudden taste of copper in my mouth, pretending the grill hadn't just turned into a funeral pyre for the version of me that believed I had protected my daughter from all of this. Because that was the moment I realized the betrayal wasn't just between Melissa and me. It had infected our home like black mold behind the drywall, quiet, poisonous, and slowly warping the very foundation of our family. What gutted me wasn't just that Ashley had seen it. It was that she had lived with it, normalized it, accepted it as part of our reality. She believed my silence was consent, that my presence in that house meant I was either too blind to see the truth or too weak to care. And that realization, that my own daughter mistook my loyalty for permission, burned deeper than anything Melissa had done. I excused myself from dinner that night, retreated to my office under the guise of a work call, and sat in the dark for hours with nothing but the low hum of the ceiling fan and the quiet, rhythmic ache in my chest. I had set out to uncover my wife's secret life, but I hadn't been prepared to discover what it had cost my daughter to live in it. From that night forward, the mission changed. This wasn't about catching Melissa anymore. It was about restoring Ashley's belief in her father. And that meant the next move had to be surgical, precise, and final. No more shadows. No more silence. The countdown had officially begun. Confrontation isn't what they show you in movies. There's no yelling match, no dramatic monologue in the rain, no shattered plates or slammed doors, at least not for me. What I felt was quieter, colder, and far more dangerous. I waited 3 weeks after my daughter's accidental confession. 3 weeks of playing the loving husband, the oblivious fool, nodding at Melissa's stories about conferences in Phoenix and client strategy calls, while I silently watched her real-time location ping from a boutique hotel 2 exits off the interstate. I let her lie to my face over takeout dinners and Saturday wine nights, memorizing every smug look she gave me while thinking she was getting away with it. But I wasn't collecting evidence anymore. I was collecting silence, stockpiling it. So when the time came to detonate everything she'd built on deceit, I wanted it to be quiet enough for her to hear the sound of her own lies collapsing around her. The moment came on a Thursday night, after Ashley had gone to bed and the dog had settled in by the fire. I walked into the living room holding a manila folder, not shouting, not accusing, just present. I set it on the coffee table and sat across from her while she swirled her wine like a woman without a care in the world. "What's this?" she asked, not even trying to hide the edge in her voice. "Your second life," I said. And that's when the silence cracked. She laughed short, sharp, uncomfortable. "You're being ridiculous," she said, even as her hand trembled reaching for the folder. Inside was everything. Screenshots of her text with Brian, emails, receipts, GPS logs, timestamps that lined up too perfectly to deny. Her face drained of color before she went full theater mode. Denial, followed by rage, followed by deflection like clockwork. "You were never around," she snapped. "You made me feel invisible. What did you expect? I needed to feel like a woman again." She paced, she cried, she cursed. She spun a web of excuses so tangled even she couldn't keep track of them. And then she said it, the sentence that finally broke me. Ashley knew. She didn't care. "Why do you?" It took everything in me not to throw the wine glass across the room. Instead, I stood up, calm as ever, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, Ashley didn't care because she thought I did. And I didn't. Not until now. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. It was the sound of her losing control, finally understanding that the man she'd manipulated for years wasn't a fool anymore. I walked away from her that night without another word, because there was nothing left to explain. The next morning, I called my lawyer, because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about reclaiming my life and reminding her that every lie has its price. The morning after I confronted Melissa wasn't just the start of a new day. It was the moment my life split clean in two, before I knew, and after I refused to tolerate it anymore. I watched her sip her coffee with that same smug detachment she wore like makeup, her face unreadable, like a woman who thought she still had the upper hand. She had no idea that while she was scrolling through Pinterest for beach outfits, I was meeting with my lawyer, a no-nonsense divorce attorney named Jordan Kane who handled betrayal like a surgeon handles cancer, methodically, clinically, and without an ounce of mercy. I walked into his office armed with a USB drive labeled Melissa's Greatest Hits screenshots, receipts, location logs, text so explicit they could double as courtroom ammunition and adult fiction. I let Melissa operate under the illusion that I had folded, that I was licking my wounds and praying she'd come back to me like some broken puppy. She booked a weekend getaway with Brian to Hilton Head, romantic suite, spa services, room service for two, all charged to our joint credit card like she was twisting the knife just to see how deep it would go. I let her print the boarding passes, text him sweet nothings, even request extra cash for emergencies. And then, precisely 24 hours before her departure, I pulled the plug. I froze the accounts, every joint checking, savings, and credit card. I removed her name from the deed of the house, which I legally owned before the marriage, and I transferred all financial power to my private account, one she didn't know existed, secured by a trust my father helped me set up a decade ago, just in case life got messy. She found out the next morning when her debit card was declined at a spa boutique. 3 declined transactions later, I got a text, no greeting, no apology, just, what's going on with our accounts? I didn't respond. Instead, I emailed Jordan and attached the latest charge receipts from the hotel, labeled proof of continued infidelity. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was strategy. This was the moment she realized the game she had been playing for 10 years had changed. And this time, she wasn't holding the cards. I wanted the delivery to be cinematic, not for drama's sake, but for the cold satisfaction of watching years of lies unravel in real time. So I waited for the perfect moment, because timing is everything when the curtain's about to drop. Melissa was out with her brunch girls, the same circle of well-manicured friends who thought she was the embodiment of grace, independence, and marital bliss. They met every other Sunday at a little bistro downtown, the kind of place with overpriced eggs and bottomless mimosas, perfect for pretending your life is flawless while gossiping about everyone else's flaws. And that's where it happened. At 11:42 a.m., with her fork midair and her lies still fresh in the air, she was tapped on the shoulder by a man in a blazer and sunglasses. "Melissa Carter?" he asked, loudly enough for the table to turn. "You've been served." He dropped the envelope right beside her untouched avocado toast. She didn't even speak, just stared, wide-eyed, as if the world had tilted and she was the only one slipping. The aftermath spread like wildfire. Within hours, the story was out, not because I told anyone, but because the people who watched her fake perfection implode couldn't resist. And then the dominoes really began to fall. I didn't know Brian was married until his wife messaged me on Facebook 2 days later. Apparently, she found out when her friend, who followed Melissa on Instagram, recognized his tattoo in a beach photo. The confrontation at their home, I heard, was biblical. Brian got kicked out, and his company, the same one Melissa consulted for, dropped both of them from every contract. HR apparently found the affair to be ethically problematic. It didn't help that I sent the firm's director a neat little package containing Melissa's emails to Brian from her company account. When the scandal made it onto LinkedIn through a viral industry thread titled, "When Personal Lives Poison Professional Reputation," Melissa's name was plastered all over the comments section, synonymous now not with success, but with betrayal. But what broke her, what truly shattered whatever image she was still clinging to, was Ashley, my daughter. The same girl Melissa once told to stay out of grown-up things, packed a duffel bag and walked out of her mother's condo without a word, showing up at my door with nothing but a hoodie, a charger, and tear-stained eyes. "I'm done," she whispered. "She used me. She made me think that kind of love was normal. I let her in without asking questions. She never looked back. Melissa tried calling, texting, begging, claiming that no one's perfect and it was complicated. But Ashley saw it for what it was, manipulation wrapped in excuses. And me? I stayed silent. Because for the first time in years, the truth was louder than anything I could have said. And Melissa was finally forced to listen. Melissa walked into the mediation room wearing the same expression she wore to every high-end restaurant, charity auction, or boardroom cocktail party. Chin up, lips tight, radiating the kind of false confidence that only works when you still believe you're holding leverage. She had no idea she was walking straight into the ending I had written for her long before she even knew the game had changed. She took her seat beside her attorney, a well-polished man with a briefcase worth more than my first car, and started listing her demands with the confidence of a woman who believed the universe still owed her something. Half the equity in the house, 50% of my retirement accounts, spousal support for emotional damages, and full custody of our daughter, Ashley, who hadn't spoken to her in 2 months and called my place home, now without hesitation. But I let her talk. I let her swim in delusion, uninterrupted, until my lawyer calmly slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was the prenup, signed 12 years ago, notarized and bulletproof, drafted by my uncle who specialized in high-asset divorces after watching his own marriage implode in court. Melissa had signed it just weeks before our wedding, back when she was still pretending to be humble, still pretending to love me enough to build together from scratch. She had forgotten all about it, or maybe she thought it wouldn't hold up. But there it was, right in front of her, and when her lawyer's face dropped and turned toward her with that tight, apologetic nod, her fake smile cracked for the first time. The judge, cold, efficient, and clearly unimpressed, reviewed the file, took one look at the evidence of infidelity, and issued a ruling that would echo through every inch of Melissa's now shattered identity. She would receive nothing from my business, no spousal support, and no claim on the house. The cheating, documented in painfully graphic detail, had cost her everything. She left that courtroom with a manila folder, a ruined reputation, and a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment on the far edge of town where nobody brunches and no one returns your stares with admiration. The house was mine, every asset untouched, every penny protected. Ashley stayed with me, and her silence toward her mother grew heavier with every ignored phone call and unopened message. Melissa had walked into that mediation like a queen returning for her crown. She walked out stripped of title, throne, and kingdom. And as she stepped past me in the hallway, no words exchanged, I watched the woman who once made me feel invisible become exactly that. Just another face in the crowd, fading, irrelevant, and forgotten. It's quiet now, peacefully, deliberately quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't ache, but heals. I'm sitting on the back deck of the lakeside cabin I bought 2 months after the divorce was finalized, a modest 2-bedroom tucked against the tree line with a dock that stretches into still water and sunrises that don't ask questions. I'm nursing a glass of good whiskey, the expensive kind I used to save for holidays or anniversaries, but now I pour it whenever the moment feels right. The air smells like pine and firewood, and Ashley is 10 feet away, standing barefoot in the grass, recording one of her new dance videos for TikTok, her laughter blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. She doesn't post about her mom anymore. No hints, no nostalgia, no passive-aggressive lyrics. Just her whole, unburdened, beginning again. And I don't scroll through her account searching for clues. I don't scroll at all these days. There's nothing left I need to find. I lived in the dark for 10 years, 10 long, silent years where I mistook distance for duty and her secrets for circumstance. But the strange thing about darkness is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps. It smothers slowly. And by the time you notice you've gone blind, you've already memorized the shape of your own prison. But this is different. I wake up now to birdsong instead of tension, to light instead of suspicion. I cook breakfast barefoot. I answer emails only if I feel like it. And every once in a while, I catch Ashley watching me like she's seeing me for the first time, as someone who stood up when it counted, who didn't break, who didn't beg. And that's enough. That's everything. Melissa still sends emails sometimes. Apologies. Rationalizations. Regrets. I don't open them. Because revenge, no matter how satisfying, is just a closing act. But freedom is what lives after the credits roll. So here I am, No longer tethered to a woman who thought my silence was weakness. No longer waiting for a truth that never had the decency to come on its own. I don't need closure. I don't want a second chance. I don't even want an apology. I have a doc, a daughter, and days that begin with life. And that, my friends, is more than enough.